strategist and communications director for the Republican National Committee, Sean Spicer. Sean, thank you so much for being with us. Happy New Year. Mike Barnacle has the first question. Luck, he will ruin it with a tough question. Mike.
That's right. Mr. Spicer, we now know you're a big deal, but we want to know, we were just talking during the break here, do you know what a quart of milk costs at a Cumberland Farms in Narragansett, Rhode Island?
No, I do know one cost in Barrington, Rhode Island, where I grew up. I don't hang out in Narragansett. I can't afford it, Mike. So
yeah, there you go.
I'm sure. But great try.
Man of the people.
I actually go to the Cumbies down the road in Seekonk, Mass, right on Route 6.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Okay, this is
Sean,
this is devolved into
serious deal.
Yeah.
Has the President-elect of the United States received a full intelligence briefing yet? A full presidential briefing?
Sure, he receives them all the time. The question, I think what you're getting at is with respect to this Russian report. And the answer is that report itself is not final according to the government. It won't be final until later this week. And at that time, he'll meet with the heads of the intelligence community and get a full debrief on it.
You say he has them all the time. How many has he had?
Well, he gets the PBD 3 times a week, and he gets a briefing from his national security team daily.
So he gets it 3. So you're saying the intel community's talked to him 3 times a week?
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's.
So just to be clear, the PBD is raw data that the intelligence comes at the president and says, here are the actual data points that you need to understand. The national security team meets with him every day and synthesizes that data into actionable ideas and thoughts and says, this is what's happening, this is what we think you need to consider, these are the decisions that I think you would have to make, or the areas that I think you need to be aware of. But there's 2 different briefings that occur on a regular basis. One is the raw data, one is the analysis provided by the national security team.
Sean, is the president-elect open to the fact that he could have hacked into emails to try to impact the election? And
of course he's open to it. The question isn't whether he's open to it or not. It's whether or not the intelligence suggests that it is, and whether or not the response that this administration has given is proportional to the activities that it has taken.
So the FBI,
or whether or not
the head of the FBI and the CIA both say they believe that Russia hacked to the DNC to try to impact the election. What else is he looking for?
Well, I think there's 2 issues. One is whether or not there was any discernible impact in the election, which no one has seen any impact or any evidence to suggest that that occurred. But the second is, and again, this report that got issued last week, it's a 13-page report from the community that talks about malicious activity. And it reports that basically in most of the pages come to activities that the DNC in particular should take to protect their passwords, administrative rights, staff training, because they were a victim of what they call spear phishing, which is people sent malicious emails, and the folks at the DNC gave them their passwords, didn't have the appropriate IT support to make sure that people couldn't break into the system. What this report really does, if you look at it, is it details steps that should be taken by political organizations, and frankly most organizations, to make sure that their staff is trained right. The administrative rights are appropriate, and other things are taken, all the precautions are taken to make sure they don't get hacked. But the fact of the matter is that that's vastly different. There's a lot of people out there probing. We all get emails from the prince of whatever asking for our passwords. People are trying all the time to break into systems.
He needed some money, and there was a friend of mine, I don't know her, but she was actually stuck in Kenya, I think.
Or Europe.
Or Europe, and just she only needed $40,000, Mark. It seemed like an easy ask.
I helped for you guys.
Did you help her too?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Well, good.
Barnacle's got that kind of money.
Yeah. Of course he does. He's loaded. Go ahead.
Sean, during the campaign, Donald Trump proposed a form of tax reform. Is he want Congress to pass that he proposed during the campaign, or are there negotiations going on now that might change that plan?
Well, of course he wants the plan that he proposed, but he understands that he has to sit down with Congress, figure out some of the additional priorities, and maybe some of those ideas enhance the plan. But he is committed to comprehensive tax reform and working with the House and Senate leadership to make sure to enact that.
John Edelman.
Sean, to go back to the question about Russia and the election, the Obama administration obviously last week announced some sanctions, and some of which are public, some of which we don't know about. You suggested the other day that you thought they might have gone too far. Some people think they did not go nearly far enough. What's your argument for the notion that they may have been out of proportion to the crime committed or alleged to have been committed?
Yeah, so a couple things of that. Number one, just want to make it clear, but everyone where the president-elect stands on this, hacking is not tolerated. It is not something that we by any means condone. It's illegal. It should be condemned at all costs. But the question that you're asking is, the sanctions that were imposed are an all-time high for what this country has ever done in peacetime. It's kicking out 35 people, closing 2 sites, and various other sanctions that were imposed. Here's the question I have. If when the Chinese a year ago in April of 2015 hacked over millions of personal information records of people who have or did work in the government, and the only response of the U.S. government was to send former and current employees a letter saying you can get free credit monitoring for a year, the question has to be asked, was this response proportional to the act committed? And 2, is it more political than diplomatic? Because in September of this year, President Obama revealed that he told Vladimir Putin to, quote, knock it off. So if he knew back then that something was happening, why did they wait to do anything publicly from the U.S. government? Was it because they thought Hillary Clinton was definitely going to win and they didn't want to do anything? The only action they seem to have taken is after Hillary Clinton didn't win the way that they all thought it was going to go, then they realized, well, we've got to do something. But the questions still have to get asked. Why did they wait? Are these sanctions proportional to the But why did they let the Chinese get away with taking millions of people's personal information that they put on security clearances and not one public statement from the White House condemning China or taking any kind of public sanction type action? Zero was said then when millions of people had their most sensitive information stolen by the Chinese. And yet China, in this case, when it's political and when it's the DNC, they act.
But isn't the fact that China didn't really use that information, but Russia weaponized the information they used?
But hold on, but let's just be clear. The idea that millions of people had their most sensitive information taken, right, and not a statement is put out, not one thing from the White House gets done, and in this case, there's these allegations of what Russia did, and yet they expel 35 people, close down 2 sites, and impose a series of additional sanctions. That's more than has ever happened in American history, at least in the modern day. And no one's asking that question. At some point, someone's got to say to the DNC, or excuse me, to the White House, what justifies this? Maybe it is. I'm not questioning that. I don't have the intelligence. But what I'm suggesting to you is that to go to this magnitude suggests that it is, or at least raises the question of whether the actions are more political than they are diplomatic.
All right, Sean Spicer, thank you so much. I do think